the possibility to have 20, how many minutes of Q&A? 15. And again, I have, while you think your question, the prerogative of the chair, to think. So people can avoid mistakes. When the change came, the negative change came, you explained about how they politicized the topic of equality and played with the figures. There were two other factors. One, my good friend Mario Vargas Llosa tried to explain it that like growth pains, like it happens in France. When you reach certain level of development, a huge development, suddenly a middle class, tons of people first time going to college. People say, well, it's not enough that they got freedom to choose. They wanted to be assured that their choice was going to be successful. No matter what they studied at university, they were going to be good, and successful. And sometimes that does not happen, a new demands. The other one is more difficult. It is that although the first Piñera government followed similar policies in a way that the Social Democrats were applying, there was a sort of social stigma, because now it's them, the elite is running it. Now the Social Democrat. And then there were aspects of collusion, of corporate collusion that some would call chronic capitalism. That started to give like a bad eye to the elite. So I don't know if to explain that reversal is any other factor. What do you think what explanation do you do, or just was the politicized of egalitarianism?
No, I think those factors also contributed to the overall problem, but I think that one of the key factors is we didn't trust people sufficiently. There was a change, for example, in the electoral system, and we changed to a voluntary vote because we didn't believe that, especially poor and marginalized people, had access to the overall growth of our economy. So probably in the center-right, they believe that a mandatory vote with a lot of people voting would be against our ideas. So we didn't trust them. And what time has demonstrated us is that people really believe in these ideas because the ideas of freedom represent them more than the ideas of anti-freedom that the left explains. So in Chile, in the last 10 years, the destruction of the institutional arrangement that we have had for the last 4 decades explained that problem. Probably the center-right in government tried to raise the flags of the center-left and said, we have to change our flags, all the flags. We have to change our ideas because the direction of people is going that way. And at the end, you ask people, who do you want to carry your flag? The original one or the copy? And people, if you go with socialist idea from the right, they're not going to believe you in the end. So our position in the last decade or less has been to foster our ideas with conviction, with simplicity, with direct people. And the last 2 elections with mandatory vote, with all the people participating, has sent a clear message that Chileans won't change, but what won't change in a sense and in the construction of the country, we've all been part for the last 40 years.
Y un presidente tiene que tener credibilidad. Un presidente tiene que hacer las cosas con convicción, que es lo que yo creo que nos faltó en Chile. Nuestro presidente, por ejemplo, era hincha de la Católica.
So one of the key issues for presidents is to have credibility and to give your message with conviction. And one example is that President Piñera was a fan from a football team, a soccer team called Universidad Católica. He was originally a fan from that.
Pero se compró, porque tiene muchos recursos, acciones en Colo-Colo. Y apareció con una camiseta de Colo-Colo.
So this is a very controversial issue. But, so he was a fan of one team, but he has a lot of money. So to reach the presidency, he bought the most popular team in Chile, that was Colo Colo, his other team, and put the shirt of Colo Colo to try to send a message to, I'm a Colo Colo fan, so I got the message.
He's a Colo Colo fan, but he too. I am from the other team. Y lo otro es confiar con quienes uno trabaja. Nuestro presidente Sebastián Piñera es un hombre muy inteligente, pero la inteligencia tiene que traducirse también en confiar en los equipos de trabajo. Yo no puedo estar permanentemente cuestionando a las personas que trabajan conmigo y queriendo yo dar todas las buenas noticias y cuestionando que el otro no lo está haciendo de manera perfecta. Si yo en cada momento cuestiono a mi colaborador, no lo voy a dejar desplegarse y no lo voy a dejar llevar a la práctica las buenas ideas.
So one was the conviction and the coherence in one message. And the other key factor for governing is trust, and trust in your teams. President Piñera, the center-right president from Chile 2 times, is a very intelligent man. But he usually questions and criticizes their own teams and try to deliver all the good news by himself and not with the teams. And that was also a problem when you communicate your ideas and understanding.
Robin Harris, I believe you have a question. Let's see.
How do you persuade poor people that low taxes are a good idea?
En simple, porque los impuestos siempre los terminan pagando los más pobres.
In simple, because the taxes are at the end paid by the poorest people. And what Agustín...
Cuando se le suben los impuestos a una empresa, la empresa tiene 2 alternativas. O lo traduce en precio, y si no lo puede traducir en precio, tiene que mejorar sus costos, y eso implica eventualmente desempleos.
So at the end, when you raise taxes and businesses are affected, they have 2 options. Or they put it in the price, or they put it in more unemployment and decisions in the company. And to complement what Agustín say is that in Chile, we have been raising taxes over the last 15 years. And the promises of new income for the government to make more social expenditure has proven to be wrong. And all the projections of these tax hikes for the public resources have never reached that threshold. So, and in Chile, people are very informed about the decisions that the government makes and are against tax reforms. So when you see that the tax reforms do not work, that businesses are affected, that employment is also affected, I think people trust more in the correct use of government rather than a bigger state with very poor and bad solutions.
And you have to show the poor people how many taxes they pay. Because in Chile, you pay for the water 20% taxes. If you buy water, you pay 20% taxes. And you have to know that if you pay taxes, you can ask the government for a better service. The people don't know that they are paying so much taxes. And so, mientras más pobre, the more poor of the people pay much taxes from their income, but they don't know. If I have, si tengo un sueldo bajo, la mayor parte, sí, explícale tú que la mayor.
If I have a low wage, this is like a lawyer discussion of economics, but the lower wage I have, the more bigger proportion of taxes I pay in services and income tax.
If I may, I have a quick question on labor laws. So we have in Croatia a very rigid labor law. So if one of the secrets to economic growth is having an open economy and a flexible labor market, I grew up in the United States. I learned very early, easy to hire, easy to fire is the way things work in America. And it's, I think, a deep truth in underlying a free economy. In Croatia, it's the opposite. It's very difficult to hire people, and it's even more difficult to fire them, especially in the public sector. It's next to impossible. But in the private sector, it's also very difficult. But politically, raising this issue is extremely complicated, and the media landscape is hostile to any change. So the question is, in Chile during the years of growth, was it basically what I've described, easy to hire, easy to fire?
In Chile in the past was more flexible, and continuously you have the left has pushed, with the complicity of the center-right, more restriction on labor. And the result is more unemployment, more informality. So we talk about pension funds and social security, but people who are in the informal phase of the employment don't have access to that. So solutions like, I don't know, the raise of the minimum wage is a very popular thing in Congress, but normal people don't gain the minimum wage because they're outside of the labor market, so they do not abide by those rules. In Chile, in 2 months ago, we voted for a reduction of the labor weekly
the hours of work
from 45 to 40 by the excuse, and it was a very intelligent move by the Communist Party. They say 40 hours so people can spend more time with their families and everything. And the only party that voted against that was the Republican Party, and Agustin had to show the other parliament MPs in Congress that it was a bad idea, not because we're against family. It's because people are going to lose more formality. They're going to see their wages reducted in the end, and they will have to have an additional shift to get to the end of the month. And how do you show that? Because you defend your position, even though eventually you could have an electoral cost. And for us was a very difficult decision, because 140 MPs voted in favor of family and more time, and only 12 MPs voted against it. And 1 month later, we had elections, and our party had 40% of the share of the votes. And the other MP said, maybe we had a wrong decision here, because people in the end, the common sense says, this is not the time to have more restrictions on the labor market. This is the time to have more flexibility for wages to grow, for the economy to grow, and not to be abandoned by these decisions.
Y la izquierda generalmente dice, vamos a absorber a toda la cesantía a través del Estado, y aumentan el tamaño del Estado, no mejoran la calidad de vida de la mayoría de las personas, y muchas veces los gobiernos de derecha o de izquierda tienen algún grado de complicidad con los grandes conglomerados, y apoyan grandes conglomerados y no al emprendedor. Y para poder tener mayor flexibilidad, uno lo que requiere es mayor posibilidad de emplearse, de tener posibilidades de trabajar libremente. Si yo voy eliminando la competencia, si voy eliminando a los emprendedores, la posibilidad de encontrar empleo nuevamente es muy difícil, y por lo tanto las personas no van a querer flexibilidad, sino que van a querer seguridad, y eso es uno de los deberes del Estado, generar mayor emprendimiento formal, no informal.
So one of the strategies of the left is to absorb unemployment by a growing state. And the response is more public employment to gather this unemployment. And there's also a complicity of the center-right when they foster or they benefit the great corporations. because great corporations are not affected by minimum wage or tax hikes because they have their schemes to resolve them. But eventually, the most damage in the economy are employees and our entrepreneurship. So we have to foster competition, not restrict it. And we have to foster liberty in employment and flexibility rather than rigid laws that tend to benefit big corporations and also state employment.
Thank you. As we are in Europe, I'm going to ask a last question related to Europe. Again, I call it the center, not the center-right, especially the second administration of Piñera. We know he played games with Al Gore, you know, and on the environmental thing, and blocking a project that had all approved energy project. But I know by first hand that NGOs, non-governmental organizations, I mean quasi-government organizations from Germany, even the church and Scandinavia, are actively promoting blocking development projects, not only in logging and traditional mining, now with rare earths. Now, are you familiar, are you monitoring what these organizations from abroad are doing and are affecting the economic sector of Chile?
On that sense, I think one of the results of the last 3 years of discussion has been a very heavy agenda on the environmental issues, and even one of the promises is decreasing growth, not increasing growth to overall the people, and that agenda was defeated. So we believe in new energies because Chile has a lot of opportunities in solar power, in green hydrogen. I don't know, there are a lot of opportunities, but those opportunities cannot be made or forced at expense of also clean energy in traditional energy. So we know that there is a global push for that, but we believe our country has to grow in the benefit of people and not in ideological agendas.
Well, fantastic. No, Agustin, Cristian, especially Jose Antonio Cast, for sharing your experience, for being with us, for traveling so far away, and then giving hope to many people in many countries, you know, because when people were sort of depressed, I honestly had to reevaluate all my work because I think Chile was doing so well, everything, the numbers showed it. And I said, wow, you know, we have to focus more on efforts like you have done with Ideas Republicanas, with your party, building your team and having confidence in your team, and with your humility. You know, God bless you, Jose Antonio. Thank you for being with us.